And Detective Duncan, we've already talked about, but just to remind the jurors, the information contained in this PowerPoint was from Charles Vallow's phone. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And on this slide, can you please read this into the record?
Yes, I can. Hello, Chad. I hope you are doing well. This is Charles Vallow from Arizona. We really enjoyed having you stay with us back in November when you came to the Preparing a People conference. I appreciated you taking the time to talk to me about the book I've been working on. Well, more than 6 months later, I still haven't made much progress on it, but I feel an urgency to get it done. As the managing partner of Right Planning Group, I'm going to have the opportunity to speak at various conventions beginning in the fall, but everyone says I need to have a book available that summarized my life and shares the principles I follow. So I will cut to the chase. I'm willing to pay you well to help me get this book into shape as my ghostwriter. I really liked your autobiography and the tone you took in sharing experiences without preaching. Is there any way you could come here for a couple of days and help me get the book underway? I feel talking in person would be much more valuable than a phone call or video chat, mainly because I would like you to read through some of my journals and explain to me how the publishing industry works. It would help me know whether I truly have a book in me and whether you want to team up on it. I played minor league baseball and have plenty of stories that my audience could relate to, along with the knowledge I've gained running my own company. So I do feel the book would contain valuable information even beyond the convention circuit. I'm out of town until Sunday, but I would gladly fly you down here next week before the holiday and cover your expenses. You could stay in our guest room like before, or in a hotel if you prefer. I hate to take you away from your family, but I know this book is vital to my speaking success. I understand if you don't want to take part in the project, but I would definitely make it worth your time. With admiration, Charles.
And through your investigation, what did you learn in relation to this email or this message, if anything?
So this particular message was a document that, in looking at Charles' additional phone records, he had indicated to Lori, as well as to Lori's brother, Adam Cox, that he had found this on Lori's computer. This would have been the first letter to which he mentioned Chad or suspected Lori of having an affair with Chad.
And at some point, were you able to learn if this particular email was associated with a specific email address?
It was not.
And did you learn whether or not this was actually written by Charles?
All indications in Charles's phone and content that when he's sending this to Adam and to Lori is this was fictitious and this was not created by him.
And just to back up a little bit, as you're going through these extractions, were you aware of any other ongoing investigations that were related to what you were looking into?
Yes, in January of 2020, when going through these extractions, I was aware of multiple investigations. I was aware of the disappearance of JJ and Tylee. I was also aware of the attempted or the shooting on Tammy Daybell, as well as Tammy Daybell's death. In addition to that, there is another case in Gilbert, Arizona, with the attempted shooting at Brandon Boudreaux.
And as you were looking through this phone extraction as well as others, were you also paying attention or looking for anything in relation to those other investigations that you thought could be helpful?
Yes, while going through these records, this particular record and subsequent records, I was mainly focusing on the Charles Vallow investigation, but anything that I saw that could have been pertinent to the locating JJ and Tylee and the other investigations, I would pass that along to other investigators in Idaho.
And as we talk through this, just to make clear to the jury, do you know how many, did Lori have a brother named Adam Cox?
Yes, she did.
Did he also have a brother named Alex Cox, or did she also have a brother named Alex Cox?
Yes, she did.
Was Adam Cox at any point a suspect in relation to this investigation?
He was not.
Was he someone that you learned had communications with Charles?
Yes.
Was Alex Cox a suspect?
Yes, he was.
Thank you. And if we look at the next slide, can you read these messages into the record?
Yeah, so these are messages that were found on Charles Vallow's phone extractions. The first message is from Charles to Lori, dated June 29, 2019 at 5:51 a.m. Is he with whom you're having an affair? He did not stay with us in Arizona in November. Who are you lying to now? Trying to destroy another family? You're evil. Period. I may take JJ back to Houston unless you have a great explanation for all of this. I will not let him be a party to your apostasy. The next message from Charles to Lori, June 29, 2019 at 6:04 a.m. Just so you know, I have Tammy, Chad's wife, email address. I will send a copy of my email you sent to KK Walker. Tammy will know what you're up to. You better explain. Charles then writes, June 29, 2019 at 6:10 a.m. I now have Tammy Daybell's cell number. I'll text her a copy of the letter and an explanation of what you're up to. You have till noon your time to explain, or I'm sending via text and email to her. And finally, Charles to Lori on June 29th at 6:55 a.m. I'm sure you're up by now. You have until 10 a.m. your time to respond, or I send the emails and texts to Tammy.
And at the time these emails are being exchanged, Charles is still alive, obviously,
Yes, he is.
and Tammy Daybell's still alive.
Yes,
And you had recovered that previous email that we talked about.
correct.
And that email appears to have been written by someone holding themselves out to be Charles to Chad Daybell.
Correct.
Through your investigation, did you learn whether or not Charles actually made contact or attempted to make contact with Tammy?
I did, yes.
And what did you learn in relation to that?
So again, looking at Charles' phone, there is indication that Charles had addressed emails to Tammy Daybell and sent those emails to her.
Do you know, or did you learn whether or not Tammy ever looked at those or received them?
No indication that she looked at them or received them.
And looking to the next slide.
Once again, Charles to Lori, June 29th, 12:23 p.m. Just so you know, and Chad know, I am going to talk to Tammy in person if I have to. I've already emailed and texted her, your game is up. Charles sends another message to Lori the same day at 5:04 p.m. Please stop spending money on the credit cards. I appreciate it.
And this is a continuation, it appears, from the conversation we were just looking at in the previous slide.
Yes, it is.
And we talked about any indication that Charles did in fact email Tammy. Did you uncover anything in your investigation regarding whether or not he ever attempted to visit her in person?
I did not.
And so we don't know, no evidence that he did.
Correct.
And looking at this date of June 29th, this is just a few weeks before Charles is shot and killed. Is that correct?
Correct.
And turning to the next slide, when we talk about the email, is this the one you were referencing?
Yes, it is.
And could you read this into the record?
So the first email from Charles Vallow to Tammy Daybell, and it was sent to tdaybell@sugarsalem.com on June 29th, 2019 at 9:06 is the stamp that was on the email. Tammy, my name is Charles Vallow. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband and my wife, Lori. This is your work email, so I'll wait to send you the evidence that is very disturbing. You may call or email me from the address where you can receive the information. I apologize to be the one sending this, but something has to be done. I feel it's best if I shed some light on this issue. Regards, Charles Vallow, 714-853-5005.
And it looks like there's another one, or this may be the subject line. Could you read that next one?
Correct. The email from Charles to Tammy Daybell, coming from Charles' Right Planning Group email to another email for Tammy is tammy.daybell@gmail.com, June 30th. So the following day, 2019 at 10:16 a.m. The subject line on this email was "Your husband and my wife," and then the body are having an affair. Her name is Lori Vallow. I've got definite proof or definitive proof. If you care to see it, contact me and I'll share it with you. It's devastating, I know, but the truth needs to be shown. Charles Vallow.
And again, to be clear, through your investigation, you were never able to determine, or you did not learn whether or not Tammy actually saw these emails.
Correct.
And then can you talk about what we're seeing on this slide here?
This is another email from Charles Vallow, a Gmail account to chad.daybell@gmail.com, sent 6/29/2019 at 9:32 a.m. The email reads, "Chad, I'm Lori's husband, but I gathered you already knew this. She sent an email yesterday, supposedly written by me, to KK Walker, inviting you to Arizona next week and to ghostwrite a book I'm supposedly working on. It's preposterous. I happened to run across it as she left her computer at our Houston home. I am not paying anybody for anything, and I am not writing a book. Either you or Lori need to tell me what's going on, or this will be exposed for all to see. Regards, Charles Vallow, 714-853-5005. And does your wife know you have several of Lori's dance videos? Explain how that is in any way appropriate. She sent them to you at your request in January, Charles."
And relating back to that first email, when we talk about the belief it wasn't drafted by Charles, did this play into why you believed that it was not drafted by him?
Yes, it did.
Is there anything else about this that drew your attention?
So this, obviously, Charles mentions a KK Walker, an email sent to KK Walker. So through this information, we were able to locate the KK Walker account of KK Walker 75 at yahoo.com.
And ultimately, were you able to link that KK Walker email to any particular person?
Yes,
And who was that?
Lori Vallow.
And if we look at this next slide, if you can tell us a little bit about what we're seeing and read that.
So also again on the actual Charles Vallow's device and the extraction from that device is a message from Charles to Lori on June 30th, 2019 at 8:42. "Lori, I know you don't care much. I know you don't much care how I feel, but just imagine this. How could my actions or breaking your heart result in what you've done? You accuse me of infidelity, but it's you who have been having an affair. It just keeps killing me. Maybe that's your goal. How can you live with yourself destroying our life, Mel and Brandon's, probably Mel and Brendan too. Now add Chad Daybell family, and you've got a home run. The fact that you continue to go to the temple after all you've done shocks even me. There really is something wrong with you. I really don't want to do what I have to do, but you have to be exposed for what you really are. You won't even deny it or talk to me as to your reasons. That's what's amazing to me. You could allay some of what's about to happen, but I don't think you will. Lying has become second nature to you. You have been impressive in blaming me for all that's happened. You have destroyed me. I've never been lower in my life. It's you that has done it. Please tell me why, please. I will slow or minimize what's about to happen. It's you who has caused it. We have a son to raise, but that's all we have in common. I will work with you in his best interest and will be there Monday evening. You owe me an apology for all the false accusations you've made. You know I've been entirely faithful to you since the first day we met. I deserve an apology from you. Please respect that much.
So this message is sent around the same time the messages are being sent to Chad confronting him about the affair, correct?
Correct.
And this is also sent around the same time Charles reaches out to Tammy.
Correct.
Through your investigation, did you learn whether or not there were any divorce proceedings that had been going on between Charles and Lori?
I was not aware of any.
Do you know through your investigation, did you learn if at times they had separated?
There was indication that they were separating, living in different locations, yes.
And on this next slide, can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing here and then read these into the record?
Yes, once again, additional messages found on Charles Vallow's device. Charles to Lori, July 1st, 2019, 10:31. I'm going to Idaho first to meet with Tammy Daybell. Lori to Charles, July 1st, 2019, 10:32 a.m. She won't see you. She is my friend. She won't listen to you. Go ahead. You're ridiculous. Are you coming to JJ for the 4th or not? Charles to Lori, July 1st, 2019 at 10:37 a.m. Then you tell me why you used my name and a fictitious email to send a BS email about a book I am having him ghostwrite for me. It's fraud and a lie. There's no other reason for it other than to get him to Arizona or AZ, get him in AZ and have an excuse for his wife. Charles to Lori, July 1st, 2019, 10:38 a.m. You did this. I had nothing to do with it, and you know it. Also, he did not stay with us in November. I will find out.
Did you learn what that reference of he did not stay with us in November was in regards to?
That was in regards to the letter found on the Chad's device, and then also another, what is a KK Walker email where Chad was being requested to come to Houston. I believe those were the two.
And one of the emails referenced him being in Arizona the previous November,
Correct.
and that would have been November of 2018.
Correct.
And there's also a response there from Lori saying she's friends with Tammy.
Yes,
Did you also review data in relation to devices or accounts linked to Lori Vallow?
I did.
In your review of those, did you find any communications between Lori and Tammy?
I did not.
Any indication that they were friends in those devices, at least?
No,
Did you find communications between Lori and Chad?
I did.
And on this next slide, can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing here and then read it into the record?
So once again, in Charles Vallow's actual phone extraction, the day of his murder, and these text messages take place between 7:35 a.m. and 7:37 a.m. between Charles and Adam Cox, who was Lori's brother. Charles sent Adam a text, "Al is here." Adam responded, "At Lori's?" Adam responds, "Really? I wonder why he never called me back." Adam responds, "They are planning something." Charles responded, "Absolutely." Adam responded, "I was supposed to spend the night at his house last night. She probably blocked that." Charles responds, "What you do is up to you."
And up until this slide, or actually, excuse me, just the slide before this, we're talking the beginning of July when he and Lori are exchanging those messages. Is that correct?
So from June 29th was when that letter was discovered and the communication starts. So up until then, yeah, or from that day on, yes.
And you indicated this is the day that Charles is killed when these messages are exchanged.
Yes, it was.
And again, Adam Cox is one of Lori's brothers,
Yes,
and he was not a suspect, correct?
correct.
And when we look at the time that these are exchanged, it's early in the morning.
Yes,
Were there any additional communications on Charles' phone after this?
there were not.
Charles was shot and killed shortly after these messages were exchanged.
Correct.
And we've talked a little bit about that you reviewed. And actually, I apologize. I'll get this submitted to the court first. And we've already discussed a little bit that as part of your investigation, you also reviewed some accounts associated with Lori Vallow.
Yes,
Did those include some iCloud accounts?
2 of them were yes.
And do you recall what those iCloud accounts were?
So the first iCloud account that Lori used was Lori for style, the number 4. So Lori, the number 4 style at iCloud.com. And from that extraction or from that information, we were able to determine a second iCloud that was created, which is lollytime at iCloud.com.
And in reviewing and specifically looking to that Lori for style, was there a significant amount of information located on that device?
Yes, there
Or,
was.
excuse me, on that account or linked to it?
Yes, there is.
And from that information, and then also same question with the lolly time, was there a significant amount of information?
Yes,
And in preparation for your testimony today, did you prepare an exhibit?
I did.
And does that exhibit pull some of the information that caught your attention?
Yes, it does.
And given the amount of information within those accounts, do you believe that it would aid you in your testimony today?
It sure would.
Do you believe it would aid the jury in understanding the evidence as well?
Yes, it would.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be shown State's Exhibit 48. I believe defense has a copy as well. And similarly, these are printouts of a PowerPoint, so we have an actual jump drive, but as a courtesy, we printed these out.
I already have it. No objection, Judge.
Okay, I'll just quickly review them.
And Detective Duncan, if you could look through those as well.
All right, I'll note there is no objection to the offered Exhibit 48. The court will admit the exhibit, noting again, the actual exhibit's a PowerPoint XLS digital file, and what the court's reviewed is a print-off version of that.
Okay.
And does that appear to be an accurate representation of the PowerPoint?
It does.
Thank you. Your Honor, now that it's been admitted, the state would ask to publish.
You may publish it.
And you talked about the first iCloud account. What are we seeing on this particular slide?
So on this particular slide, I'm showing you the Lori for style at iCloud.com account username. Under this account, these 4 numbers are registered under that account.
And As you went through the account, is that where you located these numbers?
Yes,
And so these are numbers that ended up being associated with Lori Vallow, is that correct?
that is correct.
And looking at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read the messages into the record?
Yeah, so on the iCloud account, Lori for Style, the following messages were seen between Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. On 3/9/2019 at 11:27 hours, Lori sent Alex a text that says, apparently it is tied to Ned being gone. There's an emoji in there, but the emoji is not included. Hopefully today or tomorrow. On 3/10/2019 at 8:41 in the morning, Alex sent Lori a message. Love you too. Have fun and get rid of Ned already. 3/26/2019 at 17:36 hours, Alex sent Lori a message. Ned is still alive, just confirmed. 3/26/2019 at 18:17 or 6:17 p.m., Lori sends Alex a message. It's not Ned, and it's a new one.
What about those messages caught your attention?
So in the weeks and months following the death of Charles Vallow, we received information that Charles was possibly killed by Alex because he was a dark spirit or a zombie. The name Ned is a name that even Charles would tell people that Lori was referring to him as. So the name Ned is the dark spirit's name that was given to Charles Vallow.
And in that last message, we see reference to it's not Ned, it's a new one. Did you learn anything in relation to what that message may have been referencing?
To me, and
Judge, I'm going to object. That calls for speculation.
I'll sustain that.
Through the investigation, you reviewed other phone records.
yes,
And did you discuss the investigation with other individuals involved in it?
yes,
And did you review reports and interviews?
yes,
And based on your review of that through your investigation, were you able to make a determination as to what that may have been referencing?
yes.
Judge, and I'm going to renew my objection that it's speculation.
And Your Honor, if I may respond.
Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
Your Honor, I think under the collective knowledge doctrine, the officer's already established that if he can answer from his investigation what he believed it to mean, and it in relation to, although I haven't heard it, any hearsay, I think under the collective knowledge doctrine, it's not being offered for the truth of the matter. It's being offered as to what the officer determined in the investigation.
All right, well,
Ju-
go ahead, Mr. Pryor.
May I respond? Judge, using that notion that it's as part of the investigation, it still calls for this officer to make a guess as to exactly what is meant by a particular phrase. So regardless of the investigation, regardless of whether he's looked at documents, he's still guessing. He's speculating, he's hunching, and he's not able to do that, and he's not allowed to do that.
All right, well, there's been some additional foundation laid. At this point, I am still going to continue to sustain the objection, just looking back at the question, which was whether or not the witness was able to make a determination as to what that may have been referencing. So I do think it's speculative at this point, Ms. Blake. Any additional foundation you could lay may change that.
Through your investigation, did you learn if Charles was designated by any other names?
Yes.
And what were those names?
Garrett and Hiplos.
And based on that, what was your belief with regard to it's a new one?
A new entity or a new dark spirit.
Thank you. And looking at this next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read the messages into the record?
So on the Lori for Style account, you see messages between Nicole Earl and Lori Vallow. These took place on 10/19 of 2019. At 9:18 in the morning, Nicole sent Lori a message. I'm not sure if you heard, but Chad's wife died last night. Lori responded at 9:33 a.m. Oh my gosh, I did not hear that. I'm in Hawaii and it's 6 a.m. Lori responded to Nicole at 9:34 in the morning. Do you know what happened? Nicole responded to Lori at 9:37. Yes, she awoke in the night coughing, threw up, collapsed, and passed away.
Through your investigation, did you learn on what day Tammy Daybell was pronounced dead?
Yes,
And what day was that?
October 19th, 2019.
So the same day these messages are exchanged.
Yes.
And we talked before that as you were looking through these, you were also cognizant of some other active investigations.
Correct.
Did you pass this information along to other law enforcement?
Yes.
And looking at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read it into the record?
Once again, these are messages between Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow on the Lori for Style account on 10/19/2019. Melanie Gibb sent Lori a message at 1:16 p.m. I heard what happened to Chad's wife. Oh my gosh. Lori responded to Melanie at 1:18. Hello, what?
So on that last slide, we saw communications between Lori and Nicole Earl that took place in the morning hours of October 19th, correct?
Correct.
And now on this slide, later in the day, these are messages between Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow.
Yes.
And what was it about these messages that caught your attention?
What caught my attention is the communication between Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow, indicating that Lori was unaware that Tammy had passed away.
And that's even though there were the messages with Nicole Earl earlier in the day.
Yes.
And on the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing and then read it into the record?
So on the Lori for Style account, on November 22nd, 2019, a text message is present from Lori Vallow to Colby Ryan, who is Lori's son. I text Ty to send it, but I haven't heard back yet. She will probably just do it before she tells me. Hope you got the Venmo. Ty said she sent it late. I'll call you when I get a break. Hope you're having a great day. I love you so much.
And in this message, were you, based on your investigation, did you know who Ty was that they were referring to?
Yes.
And who was that?
Kylie Ryan.
Did you learn when the last known sighting of Tylee was?
I believe it was the beginning of September 2019.
So this message is sent months after the last known sighting.
Yes.
And then you had indicated you also looked at another iCloud account.
Yes. So from the Lori for Style account led us to the lollytime at ICloud.com. This information provided indicated that this particular account was created on July 1st, 2019. And the cell phone numbers listed are the numbers that are attached to that account.
So this particular account was created just 10 days before Charles is killed.
Yes.
And again, during this time, Tammy is still alive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Turning to the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read it into the record?
Yes, this is communication found on this iCloud account between Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. On July 9th, 2019 at 1:49 p.m., Lori sent Alex a message stating, "So the plot thickens. Call me when you can." She sends another message to Lori, or another message to Alex Cox, 7/9/2019 at 9:50 p.m. Getting sleepy. So I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple days. Mel too. She can't go to Utah. They are planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thank you for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you.
And when these messages are copied over, do you copy them over as written?
Yes, I do.
So some may contain spelling errors,
Correct.
and the only difference is you did not include the emojis.
Correct.
What is it about these messages that stuck out to you?
This is 2 days before Charles would have died. Also, in looking at Charles Vallow's account, Charles was talking with Adam Cox about planning some sort of intervention, if you would, and talking to Lori about her radical beliefs and the letters that he had found. So this stood out to me as some sort of plan that was taking place.
And again, this is just 2 days before Alex shoots and kills Charles Vallow.
Yes,
Were you able to determine who the Mel is that's being referenced in that second text?
that is Melanie Boudreau.
And who is she in relation to Lori Vallow?
That is Lori's niece.
And then moving to the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read the messages into the record?
So what you're seeing here is oftentimes in what appears in an iCloud, or what doesn't appear in an iCloud, you can capture in an actual phone record. Phone records and phone extractions are different. Phone extraction it's a copy of the actual device, where a phone record or a phone, they call them call detail records, are actual phone calls, text messages that are sent, and records are retained by the actual phone carrier. So in looking at a timeline of Charles Vallow's death, I was able to look at Lori Vallow's phone call detail records, and I noticed that there were phone or messages, text messages between Lori and Chad the day of Charles Vallow's murder. The times are at 6:12 a.m., 7:01 a.m., and 7:33 a.m. There is a record that this text occurred, but there's no content of what the actual text is.
And through your investigation, were you able to determine a span of time in which you believe Charles Vallow to have been shot?
Yes.
And when was that?
Based on our investigation, you looked at the record of Adam Cox and the last message sent by Chad and Adam, 7:37. So he arrives at the residence based on location data on Chad's phone.
And sorry to interrupt. I think you said Chad's phone. Do you mean
I
Charles?
apologize. On Charles' phone. So Charles Vallow had location data on his phone, so it shows when he arrives. So it's around that 7:30 timeframe that Charles arrived at the Four Peaks address, and then obviously the call placed by Alex Cox at 8:36 indicating the shots. So somewhere between the 7:30 and 8:30 timeframe.
And so these messages with Chad are essentially stopped just before Charles arrives or around the same time.
Correct.
And then turning to the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read them into the record?
So these are text messages between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, and the text messages were on July 18th, 2019. Lori sent Chad a message. I just got the letter from the insurance company saying that I am not the beneficiary. It's a spear through my heart. Who do you think he changed it to? Brandon or probably Kay? He left nothing for JJ. Chad responded to Lori, wow, that's terrible. There's no way to find out. Lori responded to Chad, I might be able to see when I get his computer on Sunday. I could check the emails sent to the insurance company. It will show change in beneficiary. He must have done it recently. Chad sent Lori a message. It seemed you would have had to agree to the change. Maybe your name was forged. You should have a good paper trail to prove it.
And then going to the next slide, is this a continuation of that conversation?
Yes, it is.
Would you please read those into the record?
Chad sent Lori a message stating, I love you. This is terrible, but it is probably another step in bringing down the Gadiantons, especially Brandon. Lori sent Chad a message to Chad. Nope, he can change it anytime he wants. He's the agent and anyone can change their beneficiary anytime with their own signature. I'm thinking it must be Kay. Chad sent a message to Lori. It will be interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest.
So these messages were exchanged just 7 days after Charles was shot and killed.
Correct.
What was it about these messages that stood out to you?
Obviously, what stood out is the Lori's concern with beneficiary money from a life insurance policy that she felt was coming to her after Charles's death.
And at the time these messages were exchanged, had Arizona publicly released how, or if you recall, had they released how Charles had been killed?
I don't recall.
But it's just 7 days after.
Correct.
And the indication to you was at the time Charles was killed, Lori would have believed she was getting insurance money.
Yes.
Did it also appear Chad would have believed that?
Judge objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Looking at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and read it into the record? So this is another message on the Lori Lolly time, I believe. Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, 7/18/2019 at 12:19 hours. Lori says, so I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March, so it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to who, of course, but it's done. I still get the $4,000 a month from SS.
Did you learn through your investigation what the SS stood for?
Yes,
And what was that?
Social Security.
And did you learn through the investigation whether or not Lori was getting Social Security money or if her kids were?
Yes, she was, yes.
And looking at this next one, can you tell us what we're seeing here and read it into the record?
This is a message from Chad to Lori on 7/26/2019 at 8:13 p.m. Tonight I figured out who I feel like. I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover. But then I have to return to my place under the stairs feeling trapped, but I sense permanent freedom is coming.
And this message would have been just 15 days after Charles' death.
Yes,
And was Tammy Daybell still alive at this time?
yes.
And then turning to the next message, if you could let us know what we're seeing here and then read it into the record.
So on 7/30/2019, Chad sent a message to Lori. An SMS message is just a text message that read, I got the inspiration to go back to my original death percentages that help us track Charles, Ned, etc. Tammy is very close. Her percentage has fallen steadily since Hiplos left. It is encouraging.
And through your investigation, I think you've already talked to us about it, but did you learn who Ned and Hiplos were referring to?
Yes.
And who was that?
And those were dark spirits that Ned and Hiplos and Garrett were dark spirit names referring to Charles Vallow.
And in this, there's reference to helped us, correct?
That's what I see, yes?
And this was from Chad to Lori?
Yes.
And then on this next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read it into the record?
So on this account was a text messages between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow, September 3rd, 2019 at 10:02 a.m. Alex to Lori, network name is anti-layman. PW is too many kids. Lori to Alex, funny.
And through the investigation, did you learn the last known sighting of Tylee was around September 8th?
Correct.
And the last known sighting of JJ was around September 22nd?
Correct.
And this message was sent on September 3rd?
Yes, it was.
So when the kids were still around?
Yes.
Your Honor, that exhibit is ready to be submitted to the court.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Blake.